So welcome everyone, and thanks for listening here. What I wanted to go over in this topic was how to determine what your win number is. Does anybody know what the win number is? So everybody's raising their hands, not. But I will actually ask more questions. So everybody wake up again, get ready to be interactive again here. The idea is basically with a win number is how many votes do you need in the race that you're running in order to win? Am I no longer miking? So can you guys hear me now? I'm still the same, but okay, so there's two audiences here. One is you guys here in the room here, and thanks for giving me the feedback that you guys can hear me. And then I'm waiting to see if you guys can hear me on the other side here. Are you the dangly mic or are you the firm mic?
No, it's okay.
We're good. Okay, so the idea is all you need is one more vote than your competitor. So it's in a lot of ways it's kind of simple math here. We're just taking a look at how many votes do we expect to have cast in your race, and figure out half of that in order to figure out how you win. We're going to do a little guessing along the way there, and that is based on the last three races, how many people actually voted, and then we'll figure out of the percentage of those that were eligible to vote. We always see those numbers in all the different pieces there. And then we have to then take a look at how many people are eligible to vote right now in your upcoming election, because that's some of the things that we can actually, we can change that number, right? I mean, if there's only 100 people in your subdivision that are registered to vote, the easy thing to do is go knocking on doors and say, would you like to register to vote? And let's get them to be 150. Oh, and by the way, while you're talking to them, you might be more inclined to vote for you over them. Because the problem is you don't want them to be getting more votes. So, too much math, found a simple solution for it. Let's go to Camp Wellstone. So, is anybody familiar with Wellstone yet? Yeah. Excellent. So, Wellstone was a senator, Paul Wellstone, up in Minnesota, very progressive, and ran a very diligent grassroots campaign the first time through, worked very hard on it, was actually reelected along the way there. Unfortunately, he passed away in an airplane crash, him and his wife. And so they set up a foundation for him to continue his legacy. So they've got a variety of different tools online. They run classes and everything else for progressives. Of the different parties as well too. So one of those resources is the actually literally a win calculator. So you basically just throw your numbers in there and you're done. Well, all right, there's a little bit more effort than that. So let's go through what the win calculator is. First thing is you need to go through and figure out what is the voter turnout of the last three similar elections to what you're running for. So if you're running for senator, you're going to have a different kind of number than if you're running for township coordinator or township supervisor. So you need to be able to take a look at that. And that also is going to be varied based on when those elections are, because some of those are going to be at the same time as the presidential election. You're going to get a much higher turnout. If in the state of Wisconsin, where more of those local elections are held off days than the big elections, you're going to end up with a much lower turnout. That makes it easier for us first-time candidates, because the biggest thing that we have is we need to go find a few hundred friends to go and actually vote for us. That's a lot easier than trying to find thousands of people that we have to convince and persuade. So we'll go through this.
It's coming in and out. I don't know why. It's like you use the connector. Just check the code.
I apologize. We're trying to figure out why I'm no longer being able to be heard through the live stream here. So do we have anything in particular that you're hearing?
It's working again now.
You're saying it's good in the back there. Okay.
But why it's going in and out, I don't know.
Okay. So we will try, I'm guessing maybe there's some RF interference, so I'll try and put this out a little bit more that way and see, but it looks like they're working in the back there. So I apologize for the interruption. So again, on this website, I'm just going to kind of walk through here. You find out the three most similar last elections, to use that as a basis to figure out when people are actually voting and how often they are voting in that type of election. Then you need to go back and figure out how many people are registered to vote currently in the race that you're in. And how would you do that? Anybody got an idea?
Go to City Hall and talk to the clerk.
So one way is to go down to City Hall and talk to the clerk. What's another way? Google is another good solution. Actually, it's a combination of the two. So Google is going to give you lots of answers along the way there. But the one thing that City Hall won't tell you is if you're running for county board supervisor, you need to go to the county clerk. So you need to find out who's the clerk or multiple clerks that are in charge of the elections that you're looking to run in. And then you need to ask them how many people are registered to vote. So exactly right on task is you're going to go down to your city clerk, and then you may even go down to county clerk as well too. Plug it into this magic calculator here. It's not real complex math, but it basically comes back and tells you how many votes you're going to need to win. So one of the other spots to do, depending upon what race you're in, so for example, if you're running for state legislator, you might need to go to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. They're going to have all the numbers you need as well as the links to they're going to have links to many of the numbers you need, and the ones that they don't have, they will have the links to. They're actually a very good site in a lot of ways. They put stuff up there very quickly as soon as they get it. They leave it archived up there for a long time. Some other states, other than Wisconsin, tend to strip their stuff down, but they'll leave it up there. They tend to put it up in a fairly accessible format, whether it's a PDF or a CSV, a comma separated value files. So you can do a lot of magic with it. But part of it is because the state regulations in Wisconsin force them to have the municipal clerks report within 2 hours of the polls closing. So in there, and I apologize if you can't see it as clearly, but the bottom is the link actually to them. So it's elections.wi.gov/clerks/directory/county websites. That's where to go through and find the individual county websites as well too. So you can go through there. One of the things that I would recommend is when you guys are starting your campaign, bookmark this site. You're going to be back and forth to it quite often because you're going to be looking and doing a lot of analysis. The key here is the more you do work up front, the easier it is to settle some of those questions and move on from there. One of the key things that you're going to want to do is take a look at things at a ward level. In other states, that might be called a precinct level. And even in some of the areas in Wisconsin, they'll have precincts that parallel to wards as well too. But basically, it's a small division where people are responsible for a given area. You may have a given voting center that has multiple wards voting in that same center. So for example, in my town, there's, I think, 4 wards typically when we are casting your votes. So you have to go stand in the line over here if you're in Ward 3, and stand over in the back corner over there, and Susie and Joe check you in over there. But it's all the same fire station in my particular case. But that helps segment out, and we'll point out why looking at things at a ward level, or basically as small a chunk as possible, is what's important. So again, to find the county clerks, here's the link for it. For example, I went from this clerk's directory and went over and took a look at Sauk County. That's where Baraboo, where the Ringland Brothers used to be. So went through there. They've got posted on there, and here's some of the screenshots. Wow, this is really washed out there. Sorry, guys. But basically, you've got, they just post the results that they run out of their magic machines. All right, not so magic. Don't get me started there. But they run it out of their machines, and that's the best we know as to what was voted. Key thing is up in the corner there, it says 25% voter turnout. So that's one of the key answers that we were looking for up front here. I want to point out something else here. And Josh kind of alluded to this on one of the races that he was referring to. So county supervisor for District 20, how many votes did it take to win that?
20.
That's the second one on this list here. So that particular one had 426 votes cast total. So your winning number would have been 214. From winning. I'm sorry. So the example of when he won on the last on this one. In this particular race that I'm using in this example here, all you needed 214 votes in order to have won. Now, how many of you guys have more than 200 names and phone numbers in your pocket right now? And I'm referring to your cell phone. How many of you have more than 200 names in your Facebook friends? Do you think that makes you eligible to possibly win an election or two here? I mean, that's, in a lot of ways, that's, quote, how easy it is. You've already got your friends out there. Now, granted, your Facebook friends may not all be in the same district, but I'm trying to make the point. You don't have to go through and know thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. You just need to know your neighbors. And, you know, as when we were introducing ourselves, I heard so many of you say, I want to actually talk to real people. I want to get to know people. I want to actually have real conversations. That's what Candidate lets you be. It gives you the perfect excuse to go talk to all your neighbors. So what? So one of the points is to why we're going through and figuring out what your win number is the idea that regardless of all the stuff you're going to do, you know, whether it's make this magic platform that Dave's going to help us out to design, and running your campaign, and setting up yard signs, and getting bumper stickers, all this stuff, you need to be able to basically do is figure out how to deal with the limited resources you have in your campaign, because there's just only so much time. And here's the reason that I'm standing up here. I want better government. So I'm assuming that if you guys are willing to go through and put in the effort to go through and run for this race, you're probably going to be a better executor of government than so many of our people that have been, quite honestly, they may have been sitting in that job for way too many decades. And so it's time for us to go through and help them move on to a better job, and we'll help do their other job because we've got more passion, we've got more understanding of what's happening, and we got more understanding of how it impacts us. So let's all go through and run that. So how many votes? One of the key things that we're talking about on the win number is how many votes, I'm sorry, the next part of once you've figured out what your win number is, now you have to figure out what your deficit number is. And basically, your deficit number is when you go through and say, as of today, how many people can I count on to A, go out and vote for me? Those two pieces. How many people can I get out to go vote and that will vote for me? Because we know I've got a whole bunch of friends. And anybody have any friends that didn't vote last week? Wow, you guys have awesome friends. I want to meet all of your friends if they all voted last week. Because I'm thinking a few of them didn't quite make it out to the polls last week. So what we're then doing is we're taking the win number, we're taking how many of them are going to vote actually at the polls, and figure out what the difference between those two. And that's how many votes we have as a deficit. So again, that 214 votes, if you know that you've got 50 people that will vote for you tomorrow, or actually show up at the poll the next time that we actually cast a vote, how many votes are you short? You're short 176. So that's the number that you're now driving towards. You now have to go through and figure out, how do I get another 176 people to vote for me? Now, maybe our math isn't exactly precise, especially when you get bigger numbers. You know, when you get a small race where it's just 214, it's pretty easy. But when you start getting into thousands, there's some rounding errors. We might get a few people that register at the last minute. We might not have the perfect voting system where all of our votes are counted, da-da-da-da-da-da. So one of the things we want to do is let's add a few numbers. Let's say instead of just 176 to win as our deficit number, let's make it, say, 225. So we'll round it up a little bit and say that's the number that we're setting as our goal for the rest of the day. So again, the vote deficit number is how many votes can I count on today to actually not only say they will vote for you, but actually go out and make the actions to do it. We're going to go through and break it down. We're going to subtract that, go through, pull all the pieces together. Now, one of the things is so what? not only do you need to go through and know that because you're being very clear in your goals, you're setting up very smart goals, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. But this is the way to go through and attract volunteers. This is the way to go through and attract donors. This is the way to go attract your fierce advocates, because we need to find people that are going to help us, because going through and getting all those votes individually, it's a lot of hard work and demoralizing at times, because sometimes people don't like us. We all know that. That's part of life. But if we've got a team of us, then it's a lot more fun. And there's a lot of other people, and we're also helping other people understand how to do this and be more successful to run the next time. So not only are we helping ourselves, but we're empowering others to take participation in our government. So the more you can get clear on this, the easier it is to communicate, so that when Tom shows up and is going to come volunteer Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and he goes, I just got 2 hours. What can I do? Well, let me explain. I've got a 225 deficit vote. Can you go out and knock on these 50 doors? Oh, I can't do 50 doors, but I only got 250 votes. If you can help me do that, that will really move the needle. Oh, wait a minute. Now that's something concrete. So every time you can get real specific numbers, people get more excited about it. If you just sit there and say, I need you to go knock on a bunch of doors, it's not going to do any good, and everybody gets demoralized. So the more you can get specific, the more you're going to get action. When you go and call a fundraiser and you say, I need you to donate money. Well, how much do you need? As much as you can donate. I got $5. Now, if you sit there and say, if I can meet my quota, and you guys certainly have gotten these emails, if I can meet my quota today because I have a specific goal that if I can get $1,000 a week or $100 or whatever the number is per week, I will stay on task. That will give me the ability to meet my plan. Oh, well, how much are you short? Well, I'm short $25. Yeah, I'll come up with $25. You just got a 5 times increase in the donation. And more than likely, you've made a good advocate out of them. Oh, he's got his plan together. He's on top of it. He's got this figured out. So knowing your vote deficit number is the key to being able to communicate clearly and concisely, not like this presentation, but clearly and concisely that you know what you're talking about and you've got a clear plan and that you're going to execute it effectively. Because that's also what they're looking for and who they want to hire for the office you're seeking. Because that's really what it is. It's a job interview. You're just doing job interview after job interview after job interview. Anybody been on a job interview lately? Wow, you guys are all lucky. Okay, so you've got the win number. You've got some more research to go through. Take a look at it. We figured out the deficit number. There's actually another tool once you go through and figure this out over on, again, wellstone.org. Goes through and tells you exactly what you need to be doing here. So what? What is the most precious resource of your campaign? Any ideas? What was the most precious resource in your campaign? Yeah.
People I knew that could talk it up.
Okay. People that you knew. What was the most important resource on your campaign? Time. I gave you some big hints here. Because the one thing that, I can go back and get another $1,000 for that mayoral candidate. Will it help? Why? Because the election's already done. You can't replace it. Once the time is gone, it's gone. So the key thing that you most importantly have to pay attention to is time is your most essentially commodity. You can always get more money and ask a few more people. You can always ask a few more people to help out with a campaign. You can certainly get more ideas. Certainly we've found more ideas than you can shake a stick at how to solve the problems. But time is the one thing you can't replace. So, fundamental strategy on key campaign, and I'm kind of rolling across into the next section here as well too, but is when you go through and take a look at how you're going to go through and design your campaign plan, you're looking at 3 people. And it's just a way of kind of framing it, but you've got your saints, you've got your sinners, and you've got your savables. So the premise is that people who think and vote alike tend to live near each other. This is not so much if you're dealing with a very small geographic area, but if you're dealing with larger areas, again, a county seat that's an open seat as opposed to just a small ward, you're going to find that certainly there's more progressives in one part of town, and there's going to be certainly some conservatives that tend to hang together in this other part of town. It's just how things work, right? I mean, has anybody not noticed that certain people tend to think and they tend to live in the same part of the area? Or at least those are the people that are more active and involved in the community. So there may be just as many people that aren't alike, but they usually tend to get quieter, and you can't really hear what they're thinking about. And you know, they might not be willing to go to the voting polls, because statistically that's what happens. They don't vote as much. So people tend to vote alike. So the other key thing that we've got here is you've got a limited amount of time. You also have a limited amount of volunteers. Anybody have an unlimited budget? Nobody's answering on that one either. So, because everybody's got a limited budget, even some billionaire that ran for office, that happens all the case here. You can always, so what you want to do is figure out where do you most effectively spend your time. What you want to do is spend your time with high support, low turnout areas. Why? Because you can get more people to turn out in those areas. And then you want to take a look at some other areas. Your second most valuable time spot is to take a look at swing areas. People that are not staunch advocates for you or staunch advocates for them. They're kind of swinging in the middle, because those are convertibles. Those are savables. So you kind of grid it out is one of the tools that you can do. So you've got low opportunities if you've got high support and they're all voting for you. Why? Because they're already voting for you. If you go knock on the doors and talk to them 10 times, are you going to get more votes? Yeah. Is it going to be significant? Probably not. If you go to a place that has high support but low turnout and you say, look, if you really get engaged with me and you understand that I'm really passionate about this, can you get them to the polls? Much more likely, because they were kind of waffling to begin with. You might even be able to get some of them to actually register as well, too. So what you're looking to do is kind of work this whole strategy here. So this grid is the fundamental strategy for campaigning here. And again, if you've got low support, they're all voting for them. Well, do you want to wake them up and tell them to go vote? Truth be told, not. Let them go get those people to get them out to the polls, because you'd rather them stay home that day. So if they're staying home, you want your people to go out and actually vote. Again, there's two key dynamics that we're constantly having in play. How much they support you right off the bat before they even know more about you, and how likely they are to get off their couch and go vote on election day. Because those are the two biggest factors that actually come into play here. Now, you can't totally ignore the people that support you to begin with, because they may just turn on you. I don't know if anybody remembers any candidates recently that might have been guilty of that in this particular state, but I remember some lady who I think was accused of not stopping by often enough in this state. That might have had something to do with her losing the entire race. So you can't totally ignore them, but on the other hand, there was a lot of solid strategy to what she didn't do, which is to say she spent more time trying to convert voters that hadn't decided. So what you want to do is, again, talk to people that haven't decided or haven't decided to go and vote, because those are the two aspects. So one of the things is you go through and you get a look at the maps. And again, you can go back and take a look at the different maps. And what this chart's saying here is the different pretty colors are basically trying to say that not everybody votes at the same rate. So this is a real live map, and one is down below 10% and the top is over 30%. In other words, literally a 3 to 5 time fold increase in how much a given area is voting. Again, you couple that with how likely they are to vote for you, then that's where you figure out where to put your resources. You need to kind of also balance it with one other dimension, which is how dense is an area. So if you're out in the rural county and you can go visit 5 houses an hour, you have to kind of balance that against a apartment complex where you can go visit 50 units an hour. So there's kind of that balance. And what you're trying to do is literally work the math to sit there and say, how many voters can I persuade to vote for me and get out and get off the couch? So that's what we're doing here. So again, you've got the Saints. Those are the ones that are going to come out and vote for you regardless. You don't want to focus much time on them because they're going to come out and vote for you regardless. You don't want to necessarily go focus on the people that are never going to vote for you because no matter how much you work, you're just not going to convince them. There's a whole lot of people. The trick, what you want to do is find those that are savable. Those that if you actually reach out to them, explain your position, help contrast it to their position, has a greater likelihood of them coming out and voting for you. So you've got all sorts of different pieces and data to this. Unfortunately, it takes some work, so you're kind of looking at going in and doing that. Again, that's where the WEC site is. That's where calling your city clerk and your county clerks and getting as much data as possible. And what you're looking to do is try and correlate. Now, the best indicator of how much people are going to actually vote for you is to actually go through and take a look at similar races in the past. That may be a referendum type issue. So again, if you're supporting clean water as a county supervisor, maybe what you want to actually do is take a look at how did people vote the last time they were trying to go through and have a vote to prohibit big agricultural farming that was draining into the water table. Or another progressive that was running for a similar type position. Or maybe another progressive that was running in a position that covered that same area. So that you're trying to kind of build a correlation and say, people tend to vote for my 3 key issues. Again, that kind of goes back to why you're running. You want to line up with those key issues to then figure out where they line up with you. And say, ooh, these people seem to be my people as opposed to their people. Sorry for it being an us versus them, but that is what a candidacy is. That is what a campaign is about. It is about trying to get people to vote for you over somebody else. So 3 ways to eliminate the deficit. One is, of course, you can persuade more people to vote for you. The second thing is you can improve the voter turnout of your base. And the third one is to improve the number of people that are eligible to vote and likely to vote for you. So basically build the number of people that are eligible, because if only 25% are going to vote, but you can increase the number of people that are registered, you're going to be better off, right? So kind of work the 3 dimensions there. So what you're looking for is where are there areas, and this is somewhat on a timeline. So we've got an election coming up in the fall. It seems kind of hard to go out and necessarily talk about, you know, what are you going to do in the first Tuesday of November? What are you going to, and people are like, I don't know, I'm going to do the first Tuesday of next week. But what you can get them excited and active about now is, when are you going to go and register to vote? Because that's something they can do now. And now you can talk about the positivity of that and getting involved and saying, you know, you can help change what you didn't like about the last election or 42. That's your way of increasing the voter base. Now, would you do it in a neighborhood that's tends to vote against your types of issues? Not real smart. But if you have an area that's, again, aligns with your types of issues, that's the place to go. So focus your areas where you can go through and make the biggest change. Track what you're doing. So if you go talk to 50 people, you want to be able to track that. If 5 of them say, you know, I'm really interested, I'm going to vote for you. Do you want to just ignore that? You need to track that. So part of the tools that we're going to talk to about later is how do you track those people and make sure, because one of the parts that's the reality of this is we've got thousands of messages coming at us a week. I believe it's like 1,200 messages a day that we see. You've got all the boxes sitting over here on the cabinet here. You've got messages over on the backs of the books. You've got it on the boxes here. We're inundated. There's probably a logo here and a logo there. So we're getting so many messages coming at us all the time. One contact with a voter, even if you have this great conversation for 3 hours, more than likely they're going to forget about you, because they're going to get inundated by 42 commercials that night on TV. So what you want to do is plug in and figure out, oh, I had this great conversation. Hopefully it was a real quick one, so that you can come back and say, I'm going to call them back in another month. And say, remember me? We had this great conversation, and you said you wanted to vote for me. I'm just reminding you to vote for me. You do that 5 to 8 times, and you're going to significantly increase your percentage of votes. So you need to be able to go through and track that, because you can't just do that shotgun, because there's just too many people to go through that you're trying to run against. So what you do is you build your plan, break it down week by week, break it down day by day, and follow your plan. That's a little bit about determining your win number. And let me see what the next topic is here. I think
Campaign strategies.
thank you. Thank you. You saved me another 2 minutes of figuring out where I was looking for. I like when we work as a team. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
You guys can actually say, so everybody stand up for just a minute here. While I finally get this thing to open up here. And everybody to your, say hello to the person to your left. And to the person to your right, tell them what's the first thing that you learned today. There's an app for that. Sure, go ahead.
Is there somebody at I don't know, the Wisconsin Green Party board that could help us even determine what we would want to run for?
So the question was, just in case you couldn't all hear, is, there's, and let me add a little bit of editorial around it, but what I heard her say is, I see there's a whole lot of races on that ballot the last time I voted. How do I know which one I should go after? Because it's kind of overwhelming. So is there a resource, and maybe the Wisconsin Green Party might be that resource, that could help us out, figure out what should I best run for? And so there was the question. I heard Dotze has a great answer for us.
Yes. Well, basically, you can always email info@wisconsingreenparty.org and ask that same question. And one of the people who monitor that email will get back to you. Josh can talk through, our election coordinator, chair could talk through that sort of thing with you as well. Right now on Tuesday, if you just kind of want to get your feet wet on environmental issues, every single county has a meeting on Tuesday night where you can be elected to the Conservation Congress.
That's Monday, I believe.
Monday, isn't it the 9th?
Barb also said Monday.
Is it Monday?
The 9th is Monday.
The 9th is Monday. Monday, the 9th. Okay, and we have a link up on our website and on our Facebook. So if that was something that you wanted to go do, it's really easy. Self-nominate, and then you're there. But yeah, some of these other races, you need to run where you live, unless you're planning on moving. But all of the things that are open are certainly worth looking at.
And can they also tell us what that position would entail? Like if there's pay or how many hours a week or what
Well,
you
a lot
have
of,
to do?
maybe not specifically, but could help you find that information. It's all on the county or the city's website.
And I'd just like to add, I think the Campaign Ally program, which we'll be talking about later, would be a great opportunity. If you're just interested in running, but you're not quite sure, I think that's a great time to join with someone like a Campaign Ally, have a conversation and talk about, hey, let's figure out what our options are. These are my interests. I'm really interested in environmental issues. Maybe the Conservation Congress would be it. or perhaps you're interested in education issues, maybe it's school board. You know, and I think an important thing too, I mean, no matter what it is, it's gonna take research, you know. We're gonna try and find, hey, you know, let's see where we can win, let's see where their progressives are. You know, maybe you're in a good school district to elect a good progressive, so we'll look at that, and I think that's a great opportunity for our ally really to be someone that can assist you with that.
And you guys can pretty much tell us where you really want a green candidate, I would think.
Well, we want a green candidate everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, there are some places where it's more realistic. Some places it's maybe our goal is gonna be more to educate people. Some places, you know, maybe it is a realistic expectation to win this race. Greens do awesome in local elections. We really do. And, you know, I think it's very realistic to look at a lot of those.
When does the petition period start for,
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Awesome leading question there to ask when is, and we've got just the right presentation. So I really appreciate you asking those questions. Info at wisconsingreenparty.org was the key answer behind there, along with a lot of other great resources kind of explaining that Josh is going to be kind of the spearhead and the anchor for that, because we've got a whole lot of interesting things. And it was a great reminder that literally one of the things to remember is that there's so many opportunities to actually get involved in government at all sorts of different levels. I showed up to one meeting in my town, and they basically, because I stayed the whole time, they're like, do you want this position? I mean, just out of the blue, there was something happening in my neighborhood, and you're like, well, you didn't show up for the 10 minutes of your section. You seem to care. Bang, that's it. So that's typical in a lot of positions, and DOTSA reminded us that there is actually an opening happening up in the near future. So very exciting there. So what I want to do is take a look next at developing your campaign strategy here. We've covered some of these pieces here, so I'm going to kind of go through this. A lot of this I want to say I cribbed. I utilized, repurposed, integrated from the greenparty.org, which is the national organization that Josh was just talking about, from their campaign manual. I also took a lot of this from wellstone.org, and again, here's the resources. They've got an incredible amount of stuff. One of the things is they literally have 2 books that were written about how to go through and run your campaign. They also have sample campaign plans. They also have these tools that we were talking about earlier. Remember, what you need to do is just get one more vote than your competitor. So it depends on what the race is. That's not so hard. So a couple of things here. One is has everybody heard of the idea of a kitchen cabinet relative to a campaign? Okay, so great. I see a mixture of nods and of both directions. I'm glad to see that we're getting nods. That's at least an improvement in the interaction here. Keeps the muscles moving a little bit, kind of shake it out here. So what you're looking to do here is a kitchen cabinet is just a group that's your advisors. We seem to have something similar to that in our White House. Again, it's advisors that are giving their best opinion. One of the things that you really want to do is get different opinions, because you have this great perspective. You've got this great view of life. However, everybody else has got a slightly different point of view. So hearing those different ideas and hearing why you think something should be one way may be perfectly right, but it may need to be tweaked as to how it's presented. It may need to be tweaked to understand that you need to look at it through all the different ways here. So it's a good way to have a kitchen cabinet to basically kind of do a reality check, to keep an eye on reminding you that time is passing, because, as Tiffany pointed out, our most valuable resource that you cannot replace is time. Once it's gone, it's gone. That's limited. Also, you've got a lot of other limited resources. So if all of a sudden you come up with this great media campaign, oftentimes a kitchen cabinet can take a look at it and say, look, that's going to cost you 110% of what your budget is. Oh, I can't spend more than 100. Well, what about this? Well, that's going to take 90% of my budget. Oh, well, I wanted to do something else with the rest of my budget, and I guess that doesn't work. So it's a good way to kind of do that. It's also a good way to make sure that you don't get too deep in the weeds on some of this stuff. Sometimes we get so engrossed in, should I go to this meeting or that meeting? Should I go through and knock on 16 doors or 22 doors? Or should I put a period? Or what color should I use on my flyers, and sometimes somebody's got to whap you across the side of the face and go, look, your objective is what? You've got to move your deficit number to 0. You're squabbling over something that's going to move your deficit number 3 or 4. Get off of it and move on something that's going to have a bigger impact on your deficit number. So it's a good way to remind you on what's the big picture. So again, Camp Wellstone, wellstone.org. Sorry, I keep referring to Camp Wellstone because that was my first introduction to the Wellstone organization. They actually put on a 3-day, 4-day boot camps on this whole thing. So what we're trying to cram in here into a short 1 day, they take a little bit more time, and that's kind of where some of my orientation on this is. But they actually have a sample plan on there. And they cover things like, what is the overview of the strategy? So that, again, not only can you read it and you've clarified it in clear communication so that when you talk to others it's clear, but you've also got a document that your kitchen cabinet can show up and have read. Because you know how wonderful it is to go to, anybody been to a meeting where everybody sits around and reads the documents for the first 45 minutes of the meeting? And you're like, wait a minute, I could have been doing this back in my comfy chair instead of in these uncomfortable chairs. Yeah, I'm seeing a few people nodding here, and the rest of you must not have really had fortunate lives, especially the ones that are sitting there saying that you've never had to go find a job. So, lately. That's a really good way, and when you are getting better kitchen cabinets, they don't have time to do that. So they're going to sit there and say, look, can I squeeze this in when I've got 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there? If you've got these documents down in place, they will be able to be much more effective in giving you their wisdom. They're talking about targeting. So which wards should you be going after? Which blocks should you be paying attention to? What kinds of buildings should be you targeting? Campaign roles and responsibilities. You know, Susie is a great person, but Susie is really not the person that you want for tech. She's great in graphics, though. So maybe you need to move her over to graphics. Now, Billy is terrible in tech, and actually what he should be doing is he should be greeting all of your voters right up front, or I mean your volunteers, because he's a people person, and he really just doesn't understand the tech. So they can keep an eye on campaign roles and responsibilities, including some of the, sometimes people don't always get together and work well with each other. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but not everybody gels perfectly. Sometimes there's different ideas that happen along the way there. Making sure that what is your message that you're trying to communicate? Again, making sure that you have a clear message that you are trying to talk to through the press, through your meeting groups that you're trying to do, through your individual canvassing, through your literature is so important that we're going to have Dave go through and spend a whole session on it. And he's put a lot of effort in numerous other campaigns, and he's going to share with us his best practices that he's found. You need to go through and map out how are you going to actually go through and have voter contact. It's great if you do lit drops. People go through and they'll give maybe 4 or 5 seconds to taking a look at that wonderful piece that you've gone through and made sure that you've had every single period in the right place and you've got the right colors. And people will pay milliseconds of time looking at those ads that you bought on cable TV. And at that VFW campaign that you went to, they're going to spend lots of time talking about how wonderful your answer was. But they will spend minutes and minutes and minutes talking to you in person when you show up at the door and you actually have a conversation, or one of your volunteers shows up. That's a place to make a personal one-on-one impact that people will remember. So how many of you remember everybody who's ever come and talked to you at your door as a campaigner? So I'm seeing a few hands here. So the rest of you don't remember anybody ever showing up at your door and actually saying, hi, let me tell you about why my candidate's better than yours? Interesting. Because usually a face-to-face conversation is what we're all looking for, and it's a great way to actually ask the real question, because it's like, you know, I see all this other stuff, but what about my personal issue? This is my issue that's important, and that's where you can actually get those conversations. Then, of course, the other part of that is you need to go through and do outreach to follow up with that. You need to come up with a finance plan. Again, we're going to do a lit drop that may need to have some money to go behind there. If we're going to do a phone banking and we need to go through and buy some phones or some cell time, we need to do that. If we're going to go drop some social media posts then we need to go through and get a few dollars to go through the whole thing. Regardless of whether we've got we're spending a lot of money, if we're going to take in any money, we have to do the follow-up behind the scenes. So we need to make sure that we've got a clear plan as to how we're going to deal with money. In fact, that's so important. We got an expert to go through and tell us how to handle money this afternoon. Or is it this evening?
It is this afternoon.
It's this afternoon. Excellent. And then, of course, you need to keep an eye on your timeline. And again, this is the types of things that when you talk to your kitchen cabinet, they're going to be particularly interested in seeing. They are particularly going to be interested in when you end up with new volunteers that show up at the door and say, I want to go help out this afternoon. When you talk to your friends and say, I need you to be my fiercest advocates and go through and find me another 10, 20, 50 volunteers. You need to have a clear way to succinctly tell them what's happening. That's what a sample plan will do for you. So, a little bit about that. One is you want to go through and take a look at what are the goals of your campaign. What are the 3 goals? Now, obviously, the first goal is probably, what's usually the top goal of most election campaigns? Win, get elected. What other types of goals could there be? Again, Dave started to talk about this a little bit this morning, real briefly, but maybe it's building capacity within the area. Maybe it's to go through and meet all of your neighbors. Maybe you're trying to build a resume to go through and prove that you can actually go out. Maybe you just want to go polish your speaking skills. Maybe you want to go polish your writing skills. Whatever your reasons are, you need to get clear and honest with yourself about them. So that's why I'm kind of looping back to what Dave was talking about this morning. And then you need to go through and make them SMART goals. Now, I've mentioned SMART before, and that's you need to set your goals to be very specific. I'm trying to build capacity. Well, okay, that's kind of, did you build capacity at the end of it? Yeah. I'm better than I was before, and my dog Fido now knows how to fetch the literature. Not real specific, was it? I want to get 50 new members to the Green Party in my community by the end of this election. That's specific. That's also measurable. We got 49. Did we achieve our goal? Nope, but close. Was it achievable? Well, 50 seems a pretty reasonable number for my town. But I only got 1 to start with. Well, okay, so it's an adventurous goal. So you're working that way. Is it realistic? Yeah, if you're going to go put your 40 hours that we were talking about the last couple months, if you're going to put 20 hours a week to find 50 people that agree with the green platform, shouldn't be real hard at all. We all know that everybody pretty much agrees with it. As Josh was talking about the stats, they're right there. People want to join us. They just need to know about it. It's the same place we're at here. And then, of course, is it timely? Well, I got 50 people over the last 6 years. Yeah, it didn't really help my election, though. So you need to make sure that you're timely on that, because that way you can go through and say 50 between now and the next 8 months. Ooh, wait a minute. Now I can go through and break that down month by month by month by month. So you can sit there and say, I need to get 5 each month and I'm all set. So do a little bit of brainstorming. The problem that often happens with brainstorming is it becomes easy to sit there and say, and again, when you're trying to get your election started, is I'm going to brainstorm for the next 6 weeks. Whoops. I lost a lot of time. And Business Model Canvas. It was crowdsourced by Alex Osterweiler, who's an academic out of Europe. And they basically came up with a way to go through and look at integrating a whole business plan that used to be, remember those big 4-inch binders that nobody ever read? It's like campaign strategies. Big 4-inch binders that nobody ever read. He basically came up with a way to sit there and say, wait a minute. Here's a couple of tools and tricks to go through, and he made it on 1 page. And he came up with a way to do it in just a couple hours. Business Model Canvas for your campaign after you did Business Model U. You can read Business Model U in about 3 hours. You can go through and workshop it for the afternoon and evening with you and your spouse or whoever, and you get some great results to go through there. but write down your results so that you can go back and take a look at them the next day and make sure that they make sense. And again, make sure that they're all SMART. Specific, measurable, action, realistic, and timely. The other thing you want to do is take a look at yourself honestly and your campaign. And again, we haven't quite gotten to defining your message or everything, but you want to do a SWOT analysis. You want to take a look at what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the opportunities that you have over your opponent, and what are the threats that your opponent has over you. All of these need to be looked at through the true lens of what does the voter think about you. Not about what you think about, not about what you know is true. You know that you've never cheated anybody. But what does the voter think about you? You know that you've never been late for anything. But what does the voter think about you? You know that you've never taken money from anybody else. But what does the voter think about you? So take a look at what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are relative to how the voter knows about you now, and how will they know about you, most importantly, on which day? Election day. And is election day one day anymore? No, because you have early voting. So election day is now weeks. But it is very key that when they pull the trigger, so to speak, when they pull the ballot, when they make their check, that they are looking at it through this lens. And then, of course, make them SMART goals. So I mentioned the business model canvas. This is a small picture of it. It's 9 boxes. It's a really neat way to kind of look at what contributes to what and how they interrelate with each other. There's a natural flow. The book is lots of pictures. It's pretty colors. It's a really neat book. I've used it with a number of different clients, and they found it very beneficial. Here's the closer thing here. I'm going to quick zip through it, but basically, who are your key partners that you're working with? What are the key activities that you're going to do? Are you mostly Why is a voter going to vote for you? What are the relationships that you have with your volunteers, with your donors? Because when you start taking a look at customer relationships, you need to be looking at all the different customers that you have. And what is your relationship with the voters? What are the channels that you can go through? Are you going to be doing house parties? Are you going to do social media? Are you going to do cable, radio, TV, lit, newspapers? Because everybody's reading the newspaper. I would say take an ad out in the yellow pages too if you really want to go old school. What are the different customer segments? Do you have a different persona that people look at you for the 18 to 25-year-olds as opposed to the 75-year-olds? And then what's the cost structure and revenue streams that are related to that? Because revenue, does anybody think that there's revenue involved in a campaign? Well, the IRS certainly does. And so does the state election commissions, because they want you to go through and report about all that revenue. Because all those donations, they look at as revenue. And guess what? You should as well. So, again, we've gone through and looked at SMART goals. We've taken a look at what your win number is. And yeah.
Do we have early voting for municipal elections too?
I believe all elections have to have early voting, yes. What's interesting is that the press is so quiet about that we don't even know that you could actually have voted 3 weeks ago for the election of last week. And with that, anybody want to get up and take a stretch and maybe grab some food here and meet back here in about 10 minutes?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're almost going to keep going if you guys didn't raise your hands and interact here. So,
Yeah, we can do a 10-minute break now. And there is a nice spread of delicious food over there. And forgot to mention the bathrooms are right back there. Yeah, so feel free to get up,
so
stretch out,
with
snack.
that, with that in mind, I just wanted to take a quick moment and thank Greg Banks for helping put the coordination of all this together here. There was a lot of people that I know put a lot of effort in here, but there's two parts to that. One is the people that bring the individual pieces, and thank you so much, I appreciate that. The other part of it is wrangling everybody to bring their individual pieces and make sure that we've got all the components that go together. And I really want to thank Greg for that. So thanks much. Let's get back together in minutes.